Hello, everyone. I'm super excited that you guys decided to join me tonight. So tonight we're going to be doing a webinar and I'm going to be teaching you guys how to set up a trust. So what that entire process looks like, okay? So bear with me. I'm going to mute everybody, mute all. Perfect. And we're going to start the presentation. Oh, 1 second. Perfect. All right, perfect. So I have a company, it's called 7 Ways to Wealth. And in this company, what I do is I help people create passive income streams and I help them create generational wealth by setting up a trust and having that trust set up the different streams of income. So tonight, what I'm going to be doing is teaching you guys how to become a wealthy trustee. Okay. So a trustee is the individual who actually operates the trust. So this is what I consider the right way for you to build wealth, okay? So I am your instructor. My name is Christina Ivette. I am a passive income strategist. So like I said, I help people create passive income streams utilizing their trust. I have been a trustee since 2015. And the way that I became a trustee was I was actually a registered nurse. But before I was a nurse, I was a mother. And so I was pregnant at 21 years old, didn't really know, what to do, was in nursing school and trying to figure things out. And so being in that position, I pushed through, graduated from nursing school, got into my career. But as soon as I got into my career, I found out that I was, working 6 days a week, 12 hours away from my new baby. And so I had to find an income stream that would actually allow me to buy back my time because I was, a single mother and providing for a 1-year-old at that time. And so I saved up. At that time, I was making $21 an hour. So I saved up my, up to $25,000 in a 2-year period. And I created my first company, which is a real estate investment company. And so I got into flipping houses and I had a mentor. And my mentor, he had at that time, he had $200 million worth of real estate. So having such a large portfolio, he became a lender, a hard money lender. And so he was my mentor and my hard money lender for my first property. And so he mentored me through the whole process, but he told me and taught me that I needed to set up a trust and have the trust own that property. And that was in 2015. So that is how I, acquired that property and obviously acquired all of my properties moving forward is by setting up a trust and becoming a trustee. So that was the first trust that I set up in 2015. And the reason why is because I needed to protect my assets. I was young, I was 25 years old. I didn't want to be taken advantage of. I didn't want to be sued if there was a contractor or subcontractor that got injured on the job. And so I set up that trust in order to ensure that no one would take that property from me. And like I said, I've been operating as a trustee since then, since 2015. And God put it on my heart a few years ago to start sharing trust with other people because it is a form of freedom, and I will teach you the blueprint of that freedom. So if you have any questions, just stay tuned until the end. I'm gonna make this as brief as possible, but bear with me for like the next 60 minutes, and then we can get into some Q&A. Okay, so like I said, I've helped hundreds of people create a residual income and have their trust generate income so that they don't have to, depend on a W-2. So I actually retired from nursing. I was only in my career for 7 years. My goal was 10. But I only lasted 7. And in 2020, when the pandemic happened, I was making 6 figures passively with my multiple streams of income, and I was making 6 figures as a nurse that I was able to walk away from nursing. So you can actually use this as a way to build wealth and retire yourself at a young age. So I retired at 31 years old, obviously with the grace of God. But I am like, it's my mission to teach others how to do the same. Okay. So my disclaimer for you is that this is not legal advice or tax advice. I am not a licensed attorney or a certified public accountant. Okay. So this is just information that I'm providing you guys. And this is what I do. Okay. This is what I have been doing since 2015 in order to grow my wealth. And this is what I educate people on. So definitely do your due diligence on the information that I will be providing tonight. The objective for tonight is for you to learn what is a trust, tax strategies, who are the contributors of a trust, how to operate a trust, some wealth strategies that you can use to build wealth, and how to protect your assets. So we have these companies here, Amazon, Berkshire, and Trump, the Trump organization, okay? So how is it that these companies pay no taxes at all, right? So we have heard, for example, Donald Trump say he doesn't pay taxes because he's smart, right? We've heard Warren Buffett, the owner of Berkshire Hathaway, say that he pays less taxes than his secretary, right? So if his secretary, let's just say, has a salary of $100,000, how is it that a billionaire is paying less taxes than her? Right? So you have to think about these things because these individuals have positioned themselves in a way to where they are avoiding heavy taxation, right? You can sign up for taxation and you can give away 50% or more of your income if you would like. Or what you can do is you can get structured the right way and use the appropriate tools that you need to use in order to protect your wealth, right? Because if you protect yourself to the point that you're not giving 50% away to the IRS or any other government entity, then you will be, using that money to build wealth for your family. So think about that, okay, as we dive in. So I have a $1 bill here. This is a Federal Reserve note, okay, well, US $1 bill. And my question to you is, do you see the word trust? So if anybody could come off mute and let me know if they see the word trust, I would really appreciate that.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Queen. So we have the word "in God we trust." Okay. And so a lot of people think that that is just meaning we trust God. But in fact, it is not. So in God we is the name of the trust entity that the corporation that is called the United States uses. Okay. So the United States of America is a corporation. You have a president, you have a vice president, just like you would with any other corporation. Okay. And they use trust entities. Okay. So they have a trust. It's called the In God We Trust. And they use that entity, and they operate with it as well. And another thing is that anyone who has been issued a birth certificate or a social security, they have also created a Sister Q trust for those individuals. So me, myself, I was born here in the United States. My parents, they have a birth certificate for me, a social security. They signed up for it, put my footprint on there and everything, right? So there is a trust that exists, and it's tied to my birth certificate, and it's traded on the market, right? On the stock market. So we don't know that, but that is exactly what it is. So their trust is tied to insurance. So I'm going to teach you these exact strategies, okay? I'm going to teach you this because if the United States of America is operating with a trust, do you think that you should also be operating with a trust?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So what is a trust entity? Let's dive into it. A lot of people, they are not familiar with what a trust is, okay? So a trust is an entity, and it's a what we consider a living entity. So it's a living, breathing entity just like you. So you are a natural person. You are an entity. A trust is also considered a natural person. They are considered an entity too, living, breathing, just like you, okay? So a trust is what we call a contract, okay? Or there's a bunch of different names that are interchangeable, okay? So a trust is an agreement. A trust has what we call an indenture, and that word indenture means agreement or contract, okay? So that's pretty much what it is. A trust is a contract. It's a contract between the creator of the trust, which is the grantor, and the trustee, which is the person who's going to operate the trust, okay? So your trust has many different parts in it. It has what we call a declaration of contract, where you're declaring what type of entity it is and how you're structuring it and how it's going to be used, what the purpose and intent for. And then it has the indenture, which are all the provisions and the different articles and sections in the contract. So those are the do's, the don'ts, and who has power and who doesn't. Okay. So that's what a trust entity is. And a trust entity, like I said, it's considered as a human. That's what it's looked at. So you will file like a 1040 for the IRS, right? And so a trust, since it's seen as a separate person than you, it files a different type of tax form. It files a 1041, okay? So a trust can do anything that a living person can do. So if you can build credit, a trust can build credit. If you can buy a house or a car, a trust can buy a house or a car. If you can, purchase stocks, a trust can do the same thing. If you can become an author of a book, a trust can become an author of a book. So there's no real restrictions on what a trust can do. So you can utilize this entity, like I said, for your benefit in order to build wealth, right? And so typically a trust is created by the grantor for the benefit of someone else. So for the benefit of the beneficiaries, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to get into the different parties involved in a trust, okay? So you have the grantor, which is the creator of the trust. Another name for grantor is settler or trustor. So you're going to hear those names interchangeably, okay? But that is the individual who is actually creating the trust, the agreement, and they're creating it for the benefit of the beneficiaries or for, the benefit of someone else. Typically, you're not going to create a trust for the benefit of yourself, okay? So the grantor is what we call like the initial donor, right? They're going to put some type of consideration into the trust. So they're going to give the trust its initial value, because the trust right now, it has what we call a corpus. So corpus sounds just like what it sounds like. It sounds like a corpse, a body. So the trust has a body and you have to give it value. So typically the grantor is the individual who's going to give it its initial value, right? So when you're setting up that trust bank account, you put $100 into it, then you have given the trust value, and that is what the corpus is now worth, okay? So typically the grantor is going to appoint the trustee. So the trustee is the next party involved in this contract, and it is the individual who has what we call the fiduciary responsibilities. So they are the person who is actually controlling the entire trust estate. So that's the person who is going to operate the trust on a day-to-day basis. They're the person who's going to put assets into the trust, liquidate or take the assets out, control the bank accounts, sign on behalf of the trust. So if the trust is going to open up a credit card or take out a loan, the trustee is the authorized signer doing all of those things on behalf of the trust. Okay. So that is the representative of the trust. And what their duties are is they are the fiduciary for the beneficiary. So they're the ones that's operating the trust for the beneficiaries. Okay. Their number one duty is that they have to appoint a successor. So a successor trustee is the individual who's going to take over after the trustee, after they either become incapacitated, expire, or resign. Someone needs to take over, right? Because this trust estate needs to continue to operate and it's going to outlive you. So you always need to have someone that is going to take over after you. And this successor needs to be qualified, right? So they can't be like 16 years old or, anything random like that, have like, unstable lifestyle, stuff like that. So you need to choose someone who is of age, who is responsible, who knows legal jargon and who actually, wants to operate a trust because they have to accept the position. And then once you have chosen a successor, at that point in time, you're going to, make sure that they are able to continue to become the successor because they're not going to take over right now, right? It might be 20 years before the successor takes over. So you have to always, keep an update and let them know, what the status of the trust is and make sure that they're still able to become the successor. Because if not, then you're going to have to choose someone else that is qualified, willing, and able. Okay. And then we have the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are the inheritors or the heirs of the trust estate. Okay. So they're the individuals who are going to be receiving the trust assets once the trust is terminated. So with your trust, you have two very important dates. You have the establishment date, which is the day that the trust was established. So if you created your trust today, today is your establishment date. Okay. And sometimes when you're dealing with trust and you're doing paperwork, you'll see the term date of birth or birthday. That is the establishment date. Okay. Then the next very important date is the termination date. So unlike other entities, a trust has an end date or an expiration date. That is the day that the trust expires. So once, we went back to a trust being a living, breathing entity. So a trust is going to be born or established and it's going to be terminated or die. Okay. And with that being said, your termination date, the range of how long you can operate a trust for, we recommend, like in this industry, is a minimum of 7 years and maximum of 100 years. So that's why I told you, keep in mind that your trust is going to outlive you, okay? Because we're not going to last 100 years, okay? Or more than that, or God willing, some people do, but let's be realistic here. So you have to have a successor or someone else that's going to take over because the trust is going to live you. Okay. So let's just say that you had it set up for 100 years and then the trust expires. Once the trust expires, then all of the assets that are owned in the trust are given to the beneficiaries. They go straight to the beneficiaries. So the trustees are going to, disperse any cash that's in the trust bank account, as well as deed over any properties or assets that are physically in the trust. So they go to the beneficiaries and you can determine who gets what, like you would with a will. So with the beneficiaries, their number one duty is that they want to, you want them to understand what is inside of the trust, right? Because they are the beneficiaries of the trust. So they need to understand the trust. They need to know what the trustee powers are, because the trustee is their fiduciary. The trustee is making the best decisions for their own benefit, right? For the best interest of the beneficiary. So they need to understand the trustee's position. Okay. Another appointment that we have is a protector. So a protector is an individual that we call an adverse individual, right? So this is a person who is not related to the trustees and not related to the beneficiaries, okay? They are appointed by your board, and once they are in, once they have their power, then they're going to choose their own successors. So the protector is an individual that is actually going to watch the trustee, make sure that they are dealing legally and lawfully, and that they're dealing in the best interest of the beneficiaries. Okay. So what they can do is they can do, audits. They can hire other professionals like a financial advisor or an attorney, someone like that, to watch over and protect and make sure that everything, or all the actions or the day-to-day operations, that everything that's being done is managed properly the way that it's supposed to, and that all the assets are for the benefit of the trust and actually growing the trust and not dissipating the wealth. Okay, so that's what the protector is. So they're watching over the trustee, and they have the power to terminate the trustee. So if they find that the trustee is grossly negligent, then they can force them to resign or just terminate them. And then the board would have to appoint a new trustee, or the successor would then come into power. Okay. And so right now, when you are setting up your trust, your position, what you want is control, right? So you want to be the trustee. And if you're operating as the trustee within the trust estate, then you're not going to appoint a protector right now, because you don't need anyone watching over you. But you have to remember, and I'm going to keep saying this, the trust is going to outlive you. So you want to think about this position in the future when you're no longer the trustee, just to make sure that you have these safeguards in place for your beneficiaries, right? Make sure that there's not, anything, illegal going on. And the reason why this position was created was because of situations like that, where the trustees were negligent and they dissipated the wealth, and the beneficiaries were pretty much sued the trustee because of these situations. So that's why this position came into existence, in order to protect the beneficiaries, because they have no power and no control. They cannot influence or make any type of decisions at all. Everything is up to the discretion of the trustee. All right. So let's talk about the different types of trust. So you have hundreds of trust. There are hundreds of different types of trust, and we're going to go through several different categories. But you see here on the screen that there's, several different types of trust. You have land trust, charitable trust, living trust, testamentary trust, irrevocable, revocable. So let's go through different categories. Okay. So the first category that I want you to know about is implied versus express. So an implied trust is a trust that is oral, meaning it's implied, right? So in oral trust, you can actually have oral agreements, or an oral contract, or an oral trust. I highly do not recommend that type of trust. The other type of trust is an express trust. An express trust is a written trust. So it's a trust that's in black and white on, on a piece of paper, on a contract, okay, written up. So that's the type of trust that you want, an express trust. Now, the next type of trust is, or the next categories is, you have simple versus complex. So with a simple trust, pretty much it sounds like what it is. It's simple trust. It's straight to the point. There's not that many provisions or articles within that trust, and that trust is required to do distributions to the beneficiaries. It's not an option. The other type is a complex trust. So with a complex trust, usually it's longer in nature. It has more provisions. It has more articles and sections in it, and that trust is not required to do any types of distributions to the beneficiaries. Then the next categories that we have is statutory versus non-statutory. So with a statutory trust, that trust is created by an attorney, and it's created to, it's created to follow the statutes and codes of your state. So if you have a trust that was created by an attorney, you have to understand that attorneys, they can only operate in their state, right? They can only practice law in their state. So they are statutory, attorneys, and the court systems in your state are statutory court systems, okay? So they have to abide by the state statutes and codes. So with that type of trust, you have all the state statutes and codes, meaning that you can only use that trust in that state. So for example, if you set up a trust in New York, but you wanted to do business in California or buy a property in California and have your trust own that property, you cannot. You can only operate and use that statutory trust in New York, okay? So with that also being said, because it's a statutory entity, it's regulated by the state. And sometimes it's registered, sometimes it's not. It just depends on the grantor and if they decide to do that, okay? So the next type of trust, or on the contrary, is what we call a non-statutory trust. A non-statutory trust operates under common law. So common law is the law that existed prior to the Constitution of the United States, when the United States was known as the continental United States, and when the states were sovereign. So they were pretty much like their own little countries before they got united, okay? And so we were operating under common law, okay? And so with a non-statutory trust, it operates under common law and not the judicial law system that we are currently subject to. And so because it's non-statutory in nature, that means that whatever state that you live in, the actual entity, it's not restricted or regulated by the state, and it doesn't need to be registered, and it doesn't have to abide by those state statutes and codes, okay? So with that being said, that means that you can use this type of trust throughout the entire nation, right? You can use it in any state that you want, and you're not only restricted to whatever state whatever state the trust resides in, okay? Because the trust, like I said, is a living person, and so it needs a residence. So typically, whatever residence that you live in, you'll just put that residence. But we use certain verbiage like the Republic of Florida and not just Florida state, okay? So those are two different ways of distinguishing your jurisdiction, okay? So that's non-statutory. That's definitely the type of trust that you want to have. The other categories is that every single trust falls under either being revocable or irrevocable, okay? So revocable, and both of these, revocable and irrevocable, only apply to the individual that is creating the trust. So it only applies to the grantor. So when you have a revocable trust, that means that you have what we call revocability. So that grantor can put property into the trust and take it right back out. The trust can be amended, altered, changed in any way. The trust can be terminated at any time. The grantor can also remove beneficiaries at any time. So because that type of trust is revocable, it is seen out here as not being as secure or as stable, because it can be changed and altered and and dismantled at any time. So when you're going to court with a revocable trust, it could be picked apart. Now, on the contrary, you have what we call irrevocable trust, meaning that the grantor has irrevocability. So the grantor cannot terminate the trust. The grantor cannot take property out of the trust that they put into the trust. The grantor pretty much has no power or control or influence over the trust. They can't remove beneficiaries, and they can't, amend or change the trust in any kind of way. Okay. So that only applies to the grantor. So with this type of trust, because it's irrevocable, it's what we call a bulletproof trust, because if it goes to court, then the judge is not going to pierce through the trust, because it is an irrevocable trust, meaning that it can't be changed by the creator. Okay. So with that being said, you do not want to be the creator of your trust. You want to be the trustee of your trust, because the trustee has revocability. So the trustee can put property in and take it out. The trustee can terminate the trust at any point in time. The trustee can add beneficiaries, take them out, and make amendments to the trust. Okay, so that is extremely powerful. So if you are going to be setting up an irrevocable trust, then the strategy is that you are going to appoint someone to be your grantor. And that individual could be a next of kin, it could be a sibling, a grandparent, a parent, or whoever, but it's going to be someone who's pretty much not going to be inside of your trust, meaning it's not going to be either you, it's not going to be you, it's not going to be a co-trustee, and it's not going to be a beneficiary. Okay, and that is a strategy that you can use in order for you to establish the best type of trust, right? If you're out here and you're you're conducting and operating the trust, you want the best type of trust that's going to hold up in court, right? You have, for example, a living trust. A living trust is where you're the grantor, you're the trustee, and you're the beneficiary. That type of trust is seen as an alter ego, and that type of trust can end up in, all types of litigation, probate, and anything like that. So you don't really want to be operating that type of trust, okay? So you want the best type of trust. So let's move on to how to actually create a trust, right? So number one, you're going to determine what type of trust you want to create. So we went through the different types of trust. You determine what type of trust you want to create. So the type of trust that I recommend is an irrevocable trust. Number two, you're going to determine the trust name, okay? So when you're out here choosing a name for the trust, you can choose pretty much any name that you want. You don't want to use a name that is already taken. The name that you do decide to use, if you have a common law trust, the name that you decide to use is going to be protected under common law, so you don't have to go out here trademarking and copywriting. You can use abbreviations like LLC, Corp, co, company, things like that, if you're operating like a business trust. Okay. When you are also naming your trust, you do not have to have the word trust in the name of the trust. Okay. So it doesn't have to end in trust. And pretty much like our whole thing when we are operating the trust is that we want obscurity, right? So if you want to conceal your identity and you want to protect yourself, you definitely do not want to name the trust after yourself, okay? You don't want to name the trust after your, name. You can use your initials or other things like that, okay? So that's extremely important to note. So you have to choose a name, and then you're going to appoint the different parties, right? Because this is a contract that we're creating and there's several different parties involved. So you're going to appoint a grantor of the trust. You're going to appoint yourself as the trustee. You are going to figure out who your beneficiaries are, right? So typically they're your children. They can also be other entities. And if you don't have any children or other entities, just think of your next kin, right? Like if you were to expire tomorrow and you have six figures in the bank, who do you want that six figures to go to? Well, that is the person that you're going to list as your beneficiary. And then you're going to choose your successor, because the trust, like I said, is going to outlive you. So you want to make sure that you have a successor on board. Number three, you're going to create the trust agreement. Okay, so it's very important that you put all the provisions in place that you need, all the restrictions that you want to. So if you want to restrict, the beneficiaries from, from receiving distributions, under the age of 18, or spending the money in any kind of way, you can do all of that. Okay, and you can put that into your actual trust agreement. Whatever it is that you want to put into your agreement, you can customize it, okay? But we have templates that we use that have all of the jargon, necessary in order to protect you, your assets, and you from any type of like litigation and things of that nature. Number four is you're going to notarize the trust, okay? So the trust, it needs to be notarized by the grantor and the trustee, those two individuals. And it is, once it's notarized, it's what we consider certified or legalized, okay? So then at that point, once it's notarized, you can then begin to operate it. So you can start using the trust. And so the first thing that you want to do is you want to grab an EIN number from the irs.gov. And you're going to, when you're applying for your EIN number, they're going to specifically ask you what structure, right, that you have. Do you have an LLC, a partnership, a corporation? So you're going to put trust, and then they're going to give you a specific EIN number for your trust. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have a board meeting, okay? So your board meetings are the life and, the life of your trust, right? You have to understand that this is an entity. You are the representative of the entity. So everything that you do for the entity, you want to document. And I don't mean small things like, I went to Home Depot and I bought a light bulb for, for the property. I mean major things like I opened up a bank account. I took out a loan for 100,000. I took out a credit card. I bought a house, things like that, right? You want to document in your board meetings, okay? So before you open up that trust bank account, you are going to have a board meeting. In that board meeting, you are going to list yourself as the authorized signer for that bank account. You're going to list the bank that you're going to, the type of accounts you're going to open, either a checking account, savings account, money market account, whatever kind of accounts you're going to open, and that you are the individual that's going to receive the logins, the passwords, and the debit cards, okay? And you are also going to, when you're having this board meeting, you're going to document, the time, the date, the location that you had the board meeting, the name of the trust, things of that nature, okay? And if there is anyone else who attended the board meetings, you're going to add it to your trust, okay? Documentation is very important because you want to operate your trust the right way, okay? You are a trustee now, so there's a whole mindset shift, there's a whole lifestyle here, okay? But like I said, this is the best type of entity that you want to operate if you want to be protected out here, okay? And if you want to also operate privately too, okay? So you're going to open up that bank account, and then you're going to deposit those initial funds. Because remember earlier I said that there needs to be some type of consideration. You need to add value into the trust when you're creating the trust. So you just notarize the trust is now established, you need to add value to it. So you can start with anything you want. You can start with $1, $100, $1,000. So let's just say that you put $1,000 into that trust trust bank account, right? So that $1,000 came from, from your business, or it came from your W-2 income, wherever it came from you personally. So the trust is going to issue a promissory note, and it's going to issue a promissory note from the trust to you, promising to pay back the $1,000 plus interest in a 12-month term. Okay. And then you're also going to add that to the trust, right? Because we have a paper trail here. We are, dealing legally, lawfully, and we are documenting everything. So after you set that up, the next thing is you are going to start transferring your assets into the trust. This is the most important step. Okay. Actually protecting your assets. So let's just say that you have a primary residence. This is a question that I love to ask individuals, right? With this primary residence, a lot of us, we don't know that that we are in the public records, right? So anybody can go to your county, wherever you live, and they can put in your address under a property search, right? Go to your county website, go to where it says property search. They'll put in your address and the name of the owner will show up. So your name is going to be there in black and white, first and last name, your phone number, your email, your contact, whatever it is that they allow to be displayed on their public records, okay? And so anybody can know, where you live, or anybody can know who the owner is. And so it's also done vice versa as well, where they'll do a property search and they'll put your name there, right? They'll put your first and last name and every single property that you own in that county. So if you own 5 properties in that county, it will show up. Okay, so that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous because you now become low-hanging fruit for an attorney or anyone who wants to sue you. So what you want to do is you want to transfer that asset into your trust. You want to be protected. So the way that you're going to do that, if you have a primary residence, is you, when you purchase that house, right, you received what we call a warranty deed. And that warranty deed is, just your insurance, saying that that the deed is, there's no claims against it, and that the title of the deed is, there's like no discrepancies with the actual deed. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to actually fill out a quitclaim deed, right? And so this is just saying that there's not going to be any claims against the deed from the time that you owned it until today. So with that quitclaim deed, you have a grantor and a grantee. The grantor is going to be you, which is the person who's on the deed, and the grantee is going to be the trust. So you are going to be gifting the property from your personal name into the trust. So you do not have to sell your property to the trust and trigger capital gains, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to gift the property over to the trust. And so that quitclaim deed needs to be notarized. Once it's notarized, then you can take it down to the clerk of courts, or you can take it down to your county recorder's office, and they'll record the deed. And then at that point, it'll update on the public records, and then you are good to go, because now the trust is going to be the new owner of that primary residence. So once the trust owns that house that you live in, now the trust has that financial responsibility of paying the mortgage. Okay, so what you're going to do is you are going to, transfer the funds from your personal bank account into the trust, and then the trust is going to now make the mortgage payments and anything that is associated with that property as well. So if you have utilities, if you have maintenance, if you have taxes, any of those things, the trust is now going to pay all those utilities and taxes and maintenance. Okay, anything associated with the asset that the trust owns. Okay, so that's one form or example of you actually transferring your assets into the trust. Okay, and then operation of the trust is pretty much you just operating the trust, managing the assets. So you acquiring more assets, liquidating assets, doing all of the administrative things, dealing with managing the trust, right? Managing the trust. So it's just like how you would manage yourself, right? Manage your day-to-day operations. It's not very complex, or how you would manage your business. Okay. It's not very, it's not a hard thing to do. Once you become a trustee and you start operating, it's going to be, a familiar place for you. Like I said, it's a lifestyle. So let's keep moving forward. So now we're going to talk about asset protection, because the number one reason why you want to actually create a trust is for asset protection and for you to operate privately, right? You want to have 100% privacy. There's something that we call obscurity, okay? And so obscurity is where you want to conceal your identity, right? I just gave you this example about how you don't even know that you're on the public records. And so with that being said, you don't want people to know that you own, 10 properties in that county. So you want to be able to protect your identity, okay? So when it comes to protecting your assets, a trust can protect you from bankruptcies, from heavy taxations, from divorce, from probate, from lawsuits, from foreclosures. Okay. So that is extremely, extremely profound. So let me give you an example of lawsuits, right? So let's just say that you have a company, right? Let's just say you're an entrepreneur, you have an LLC or an S corporation, and you are the owner of that business. So now that LLC, right? The LLC stands for what? It stands for limited liability company. So there's a key word in there that a lot of people just brush over. The key word is limited liability. It doesn't say full liability, and it doesn't say that intentionally, right? So limited liability means you have limited liability. So let's just say that you're running an LLC, somebody decides to sue your business. Your business gets sued, it gets pulled into litigation, right? And then at that point in time, there's a lawsuit, and let's just say that the judge decides to pierce that corporate veil. So if the judge pierces the corporate veil for your LLC, because you have limited liability, they can come after you personally. And let's just say you have personal assets. So then at that point, they can, they can freeze your bank accounts, they can seize your assets, and they can garnish your wages. They can do a lot of things, right? So you don't want that to happen. And you definitely do not want to wait until you're in litigation before you decide to protect yourself, because this country is a sue-friendly country, okay? Everyone is always, trying to sue someone. So you don't want to be in that position where you wait till you get sued in order to protect yourself. So you want to be proactive. Okay. So with that being said, because you're the owner of that LLC, you just got sued personally, and they, garnished your wages, and they took your house, right? They seized your assets. So now, on the contrary, let's just say that this same LLC, instead of you being the owner on paper, now you have your trust as the owner on paper. So your LLC is owned by the trust. The trust is the authorized member of that limited liability company. So when you go to litigation and the judge decides to pierce the corporate veil, you actually have that first layer of protection, which is your trust. So now all they can do is actually sue your trust for whatever the trust has, right? And so with that type of trust, you're going to be, using a business trust, and you'll use that business trust as a holding company to own the LLC. And so you're not going to have, you're only going to have operating funds in there, right? You're not going to have assets in that trust. You're not going to have, excess funds. Like you're not going to have $1 million in there, right? If it's only taking 50,000 in order to operate the business, that's all you're going to have in that trust bank account. Okay. So that protects you, because if anything happens with that business trust, you can just terminate the trust. You can bankrupt the trust and create a new trust, right? So now let's talk about divorce, right? So let's just say that you have I'll just give you a real life example of one of my clients, right? So I have a client, he's been married for 9 years, and he's going through a divorce right now. And so within his marriage, he has 7 properties, right? But 2 properties were like early on in the marriage, and then his wife his wife prohibited him from buying more property. And so he actually bought more property, but he bought it in a trust. Okay, so he has 5 houses in a trust. And so now during the divorce, because a divorce is between a husband and a wife, right? Living people, anything that is associated with that trust cannot be pulled into the divorce. So there's a trust, and there's 5 houses sitting in that trust, and that it is not associated with the divorce at all. So only the 2 properties that were outside of the trust are attached to or within that divorce proceedings. Okay, so this is one way that a trust can actually protect you from divorce, because I'm not sure if you know this, but a divorce is a transfer of wealth. Okay, you can really lose your wealth, or on the contrary, you can gain a lot of wealth through a divorce. And I've seen it and I've heard it. Okay, next, let's talk about heavy taxation. So a lot of us, we have decided to give 50% of our income to the IRS and our state, okay? And so there's several different ways that you can save on your taxes, when it comes to utilizing a trust, okay? So let's just say that you are a W-2 employee and you make $100,000 per year, right? So what you can do, if you have what we call the tax exempt nonprofit trust, which is a ministry trust, or another name for it is a 508c1a faith-based organization, right? So let's just say you have that type of trust, right? What you can do is you can donate 60%, so up to 60% of your salary, or your, not salary, but your gross income, to your trust. Okay, so that means that you made $100,000, you are going to donate on paper $60,000, and you're going to get a donation receipt from your trust, $60,000 to your trust, and now you're only going to be taxed on $40,000. You are going to be saving astronomically, okay? And that means that with that $60,000, what can you do? Now that it's in your trust, you can invest it, right? You can buy stocks, you can buy real estate, you can buy crypto, you can do whatever you want once it's on the trust side. So you can avoid heavy taxation. So back to that, that particular trust that I was telling you about, right? The ministry trust, right? That's a tax exempt trust. So that trust does not have to file federal taxes, and you don't have to file state taxes. You don't have to file sales taxes, not file, but you're not subject to sales taxes or property taxes if a particular property is owned by that type of trust. Okay, so that is extremely powerful. And that will save you from a lot of taxes. Okay, so you definitely want to have that type of trust within your structure, because like I said, it's a nonprofit, it's a tax exempt trust, and you want to have a nonprofit arm within your structure. So another example that I like to give is Steph Curry, right? He's one of the best basketball players of all time. And so with Steph Curry, he had a contract for $250 million. And we know that that your like IRS records and stuff like that, like a lot of that stuff ends up being, public records. And so for that contract that he had for $250 million, he ended up paying $142 million in taxes, right? He's in California and he's at the highest tax bracket, right? So just imagine if he was dealing in trust and he was able to be structured properly to where he could save some of that 142 million for his children, right? To build wealth and to do other stuff with it, right? Instead of giving that much away to the IRS, right? So the last one I want to touch on is probate. So probate is inevitable, guys. It's inevitable as long as you want it to be. So there's only one way in order for you to avoid probate, and that's actually by you creating your own estate, and that is through a trust. So let's talk about probate. So let's just say that you have a house, right? And I always ask this question because it's a very important question. I want you to think about this. If you have a primary residence and that house today, right now, is in your personal name, John Doe, and let's just say that you expire tomorrow, how do you expect that house to be transferred from your personal name to your spouse or your children's name? So, with that being said, there is no way that that house is going to be transferred from your personal name to your children's name without your children having to be dragged through court. So we don't think about that. We're just acquiring the assets, but we don't think about how am I going to transfer these assets? And unfortunately, we don't have our affairs in orders. We think that tomorrow is promised when it's not. And because of that, then our family has to be subject to probate. So what is probate? Probate is where you have, a living person and they die with a bunch of assets, right? So you die with a car, a house, 6 figures in the bank. And you did not, let's just say you had a will, right? A will, and you put, you had your 2 kids on there and you wanted them to get your assets. A will is just a legal document, but it doesn't protect you. There's no asset protection associated with a will, okay? It's just basically a wish list, okay? It doesn't really hold up in probate. So a will end up in probate. It's not going to avoid probate, okay? So let's just say you had a will, and you had all these assets, but then you had a bunch of debt too, right? You had student loan debt, you had credit card debt, all this stuff. So now the state that you live in is going to issue you an estate, okay? So when you die, the state is going to issue you an estate. So you're going to have an estate anyways. You might as well create your own estate because the state is going to create one for you, okay? So with that being said, they are going to create an estate under your name, and your estate needs to be represented by a probate attorney, and it's going to end up in probate court. Okay, so it's going to be up to a judge whether your children get the property or whether it gets sold to satisfy any liabilities that you left before your death. Okay, so with that being said, you're doing your kids a disservice because you passed away, didn't have your affairs in order, and your children, instead of grieving properly, now they're being, subject to having to go through court in order to ensure that they get to keep mom's house or get to keep dad's house, right? And so with the probate process, the way it works is all of your assets are there, but then they account all of your liabilities. Okay, so that's all of the creditors, all of the debtors and everything. So now your entire estate is going to be subject to, and I don't know if you know this, but the IRS, you are a human resource to the IRS. Okay. So they are going to charge you a death tax. The IRS charges you taxes when you die. Okay, so your estate is going to be charged a death tax, an estate tax, and an inheritance tax. Okay, so those are three fees that are already going to come out. Then your probate attorney needs to be obviously compensated. The court system has their own fees, so they need to be compensated. And then any debtors or creditors that you had prior to your death. So if you had a $15,000 credit card bill and you had, student loans, $50,000, all that stuff is going to be taken out of your estate. Whatever is left over is what the children get, what your heirs or your beneficiaries get, okay? Whatever's left over. So sometimes what I've seen, and I've seen it, sometimes what I've seen is that the debt, the fees, the probate fees, attorney's fees, court fees, they're so much that unfortunately the children are not able to keep the house. They have to sell the house, the land, the car, whatever assets are there, they have to sell them in order to pay off all the fees. So they don't end up with grandma's house or mom and dad's house. They don't. So that's what I have seen, okay, in certain situations. So you want to avoid that at all costs. You want to, have your affairs in order. You don't want to drag your kids through probate. And so the only way to avoid probate is by having a trust, because now the trust owns all of those assets. So in this same situation, right? The trust owns the house, the trust owns the car, the trust owns, the six figures in the bank, right? And you pass away, you the trustee, you pass away. There is no transfer of wealth that needs to happen, or no transfer of ownership that needs to happen. Okay, meaning that the house is going to stay under the trust, the car, the bank account is going to stay under the name of the trust. Your children are the beneficiaries, so there is no transfer that needs to happen. So that means that you avoid probate at all cost, okay, which is good for you and your estate and the inheritance that you're leaving your children. Another beautiful thing is that when you pass away, and if you have all of these debts and these, all of these debts that you owe, those debts die with you, right? So if you had the 50,000 in student loan and the 15 in credit card debt, it dies with you. They can't come after the trust because the trust is its own entity. They can't even think about it, right? So your assets are not going to be subject to the creditor. So you're actually protecting it that way. Okay, so that is that's the number one reason you need to actually establish a trust if you want to build generational wealth. I think that's what we're here for. I think that's what we're doing, right? We're building generational wealth for our kids' kids. And so you need to think about transferring that wealth. What does that look like? So let's get into this wealth building formula, because I think that's why you guys came here, right? So you have I have three pillars here for you. So the first one is structure, okay? So you need to be structured the right way when you are intentionally building generational wealth. So the three trusts that I recommend that you have is a business trust, which is for profit, a private family trust, which is going to be your asset holding trust, and the tax exempt nonprofit trust, okay, which is obviously nonprofit, okay? So now let's see how this structure is going to flow. So the business trust is the entity that you're going to use to conduct business, okay? So if you are already an entrepreneur, then you can establish this entity and you can just, conduct business privately as you want. Or what you can use it for is you can actually use it as a holding company. So your business trust is going to now operate No, so now it's going to actually own your LLC. Okay, so let's just say that you have an LLC or a corporation. So what you're going to do is this LLC that you own is in your personal name. So once you have established your business trust, you are going to do an amendment. So you created that that LLC with the Secretary of State. And I don't know if you know this, but the Secretary of State, because you created your LLC with the Secretary of State, that is what we call a statutory entity. Okay, so that LLC has to abide by the state statutes and codes. But because you created that entity with the Secretary of State, they have jurisdiction and they have regulation. They regulate your entity. Okay, so for example, if you decide that you're not going to pay your annual report, then guess what? They dissolve your entity, right? But if you have a business trust, there is no annual report, right? You can operate it at your own discretion. So that's one thing that you have to keep in mind, okay? So now you are obviously under the public records. So anyone can search the LLC and they can see that you're the owner. So what you want to do is you want to do an amendment of the articles of incorporation. You're going to remove yourself as the owner of that LLC, or what we call is authorized member, and you're going to add a new authorized member, which is your business trust. So now your business trust owns the LLC. Okay, so your business trust is acting as a holding company and is owning your entity. Okay, so now let's just say that your LLC generated $100,000. Your LLC is a pass-through entity. So what you would do is you would do a K-1 distribution and you would distribute the entire $100,000 to the owner, which is the business trust. So now the LLC is going to pay $0 in taxes because it distributed everything to the business trust. So now the business trust, that is a for-profit entity and it's taxed at about like 37-38%. Okay. So it actually has what we call the highest tax, the highest taxes. They pay the highest taxes, and that was done strategically because the IRS, I don't think the IRS wants a lot of people operating with trust. Okay, so the thing about a trust is that it has the most benefits. So for example, with a trust, right? One thing that a trustee can do is they can determine what is considered income. So you just got $100,000 into the business trust. You're the trustee, right? And you can determine what is considered DNI, distributable net income. So if you determine and document in your board meetings that that $100,000 is not income, then guess what? It's not income and they cannot tax you on it. It's not considered a taxable event. That's one. Another thing is that if you leave the funds inside of the trust bank account and you don't start issuing 1099s and doing stuff like that, then because the funds stay within the corpus or within the trust, then that means that it doesn't trigger a taxable event. So that $100,000, you don't have to pay taxes on it as long as it stays within the trust. Okay. Or what this entity can do is it can actually distribute the money, 100% of the money, to another entity, to its beneficiaries. So the beneficiary of the business trust, you want it to be your private family trust, because all of the money that you're making from your business, you want it to flow to your private family trust in order for you to be able to expend it on your family, right? So that's what we're going to do. So now we distribute $100,000 to our private family trust. So now our business trust has a 0% tax liability. Okay. So now that $100,000 is sitting in our private family trust. What are we going to do with it? We're going to spend it. Okay. One thing that I love about this type of entity, and entities in general, is that you get to spend the money and you pay taxes on whatever's left over. Right? That's what you do with your LLCs and all these other things, which is beautiful, because on the personal side, it's the contrary, right? On the personal side, you have to pay federal taxes, Social Security, and Medicare before you even see your paycheck. So then you get paid what's left over, right? The IRS is going to take theirs first. Social Security, Medicare, they take theirs first. Your 401k, all of those things, and then you get the leftovers. And then you do what you need to do, which is pay your bills, right? So with a private family trust, it's the other way around. So you get the $100,000 and you're going to start spending on your family. So with this entity, that's where the mortgage is going to come out of, right? The mortgage, the rent, the groceries, private school tuition, your car note, gasoline, everything, family vacation, whatever it is, right? Everything's going to come out. So you expend it. So let's just say that $100,000, you expend it all the way down to 20,000, right? So you spent 80 of it, you only have 20 left. So that 20,000 is now going to be taxed, and it's going to be taxed at, the 38%. Okay. So you can decide if you want to be taxed. You want that 20,000 to be taxed at that high tax rate, or you can do something else. So what can you do? You can actually donate that $20,000 to your tax exempt trust, to your ministry trust, to your faith-based organization, to your nonprofit trust. You can donate that 20,000. So what happens? You donate the 20,000 to your ministry trust, you receive a donation receipt, and now at the private family trust level, you pay 0 in taxes, right? Because you donated the rest. So now that 20,000 is now sitting in your tax exempt trust, right? And at that point in time, because it's a nonprofit, you do whatever you need to do with it, right? So let's just say that you are, you have your philanthropic endeavors and you are, helping people with clean water. So you do your charities, right? You donate to your charities, and then with the rest of the money, you invest it, okay? You put it into crypto, stocks, you buy real estate, you do whatever you want with it. Because with this type of entity, let me tell you a little bit about a 508, okay? So let's get into it. A 508c1a is the only exception to you having to apply for a 501c3. So you have your regular nonprofits, and with this nonprofit, in order for a nonprofit to be tax exempt, it has to apply for a 501c3. And once it applies, it obviously needs to be approved before it can be tax exempt, okay? And with this whole 501c3 status, you have a restriction of freedom of speech, because you cannot talk about, politics, okay? So that's one thing. Another thing is that you have to provide all your financials, your board meetings, your bank statements, things like that. Okay. So there's a lot of documentation that you need to provide to the IRS in order to keep that status. So there's one exception to being tax exempt, and the exception to not having to file for or apply for a 501c3. And that is if you are a trust, and if that trust is designated as a 508c1a, then it is automatically tax exempt and does not have to apply for tax exempt status. The reason why this is structured that way in the IRC is because of the separation of church and state. So another name for a 508c1a designated trust is church. So you have church, you have convention, you have auxiliary, you have faith-based organization, you have ministry, things like that. So because there's separation between church and state, you do not have to apply for tax exempt. You're automatically tax exempt, so you don't file for federal taxes. You don't have to give them your bookkeepings, your board meetings, or anything like that. That is extremely powerful. So with that type of entity, you get to qualify for one property. You can be exempt from property taxes. Okay, so some investors, they use this for real estate investing. But if you wanted to, you would need to get one trust per property if you wanted to take advantage of being exempt from property taxes, which is powerful, right? Like my taxes in my home is almost $8,000. So I'm saving $8,000 per year just by having it in a tax exempt nonprofit trust. And you can also be doing the same, because what can you do with an extra $8,000, right? So that's what you're going to do. So once you deposit that or donate that 20,000 into the tax exempt trust, that's where it stops, right? You know that you don't have to pay taxes from that point on. You don't have to file, you don't have to do any reportings or anything like that, which is powerful. So now let's move on to the next, hold on one second. So now let's move on to the next Now let's move on to the next pillar, which is credit, right? So you want to be building credit. So like I told you earlier in the call, you can actually establish business credit with your trust, okay? And the way that you're going to establish business credit with your trust is the same way that you would establish it with an LLC. So you are going to, get a profile with Dun & Bradstreet. You're going to get a DUNS number. You're going to start applying for net 30 accounts with these, account receivable companies. And then you're going to generate a paydex score, right? And once you have that paydex score, then you are, able to get more trade lines. And what you can do is you can be a personal guarantee if you wanted to, right? As long as you know that, because I know a lot of people are against it, but as long as you know you're not going to default on your credit cards, then I don't see the problem with you being a personal guarantee in order to help your trust get that foundation that it needs in order for it to create its own residual. So that's what we're doing here, right? We're going to create corporate credit for the trust so that the trust can start generating its own income, because you want your trust to be self-sustaining. You don't want to be in a position to where you have to deposit all of your W-2 money into your trust, right? That's not what we're doing here. So another thing is that your trust can also, specifically your nonprofit trust, it can qualify for nonprofit grants, for donations out here in the community. You can do fundraisers, things of that nature. So now, once the trust has that foundational money, let's just say that you went out, you got a credit card for $50,000, right? What are you going to do with that money? Well, you're going to move on to the next pillar, which is invest, right? So we are going to begin investing so that the trust now is generating its own passive income, okay? So there's a lot of different investments that I recommend, but right now, the number 2 that I want to talk to you guys about is index universal life insurance policy and real estate. Okay. So with an index universal life insurance policy, a lot of people don't know that that insurance is actually supposed to be used when you're living, not when you're dead. So we get a policy and we just want to insure it so that once we die, our family gets, $500,000, right? But that's not the strategy. The strategy that you want to do is what we call like infinite banking, right? I don't know if you've heard of this term, but there is a term called infinite banking, private money banking, be your own bank, things like that. And so with that type of structure, you are able to be your own bank, and you're able to pay yourself first, right? Which is actually what you want to do. Hold on one which is actually what you want to do, right? You want to pay yourself first. And so the way that we're going to do that is you're going to get and you're going to use your insurance policy. So it could work with a whole life policy if you have a whole life policy, or it could also work with an index universal life insurance policy, because these policies, they build cash value, okay, which is beautiful, because you're going to have a death benefit, and then you're also going to have cash value. So with a whole life policy, it's going to be slower for you to build wealth with that policy, because your interest is going to be, your return is going to be, is guaranteed, so it's smaller. So usually it's about like 4%, right? But with the index universal life insurance policy, or IUL, right, for short, with that type of policy, it's actually mirrors the market, right? So you can choose whatever index you want, right? So we have the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, or the S&P 500, okay? So you'll choose whichever index you want. I've chosen the S&P 500 for my IUL policies, okay? And so with that being said, when, let's just say that the market is doing 8%, then the insurance company is going to match the 8%. And so whatever you have in your cash value, you're going to get an 8% return on that, which is great, right? And so they do have a cap. So usually the cap is about like 12. So you can get anywhere between 0 to 12. So if the market is doing, let's just say 20, you're going to get capped at 12. But let's just say the market is doing -2, you're only going to get 0. So there's no real risk involved with this type of investment, okay? So that's one thing. So your insurance policy is actually seen as an asset. That's one. Two, is tax-free, so the IRS doesn't come after the money that you're putting in or pulling out. And then another thing is that it's liquid, so it has liquidity. So what is the investment strategy that we're going to use? Hold on one second. So what is the investment strategy that we're going to use with this IUL? Like I said, you're going to pay yourself first, okay? That is something that we do not do. And it is a mindset shift and a lifestyle shift that you're going to do right now, okay? If you're off of mute, can you please mute yourself, please? If you're off of mute. Thank you so much. So back to what I was saying, right? So you are going to pay yourself first, okay? And so the way that you're going to do that is by whatever's coming in. And so we typically don't do that. So let me just show you what the comparison is, right? So typically what we do is we get paid, right, on Friday, $5,000. And what we're going to do is we pay our bills first, right? So we pay the mortgage, we pay the car note, we pay the gasoline and school tuition, right? And whatever is left over, we save, right? So out of that 5,000, we're all the way down to $1,000, and we save that $1,000. We put it in a savings account, or, a high yield savings account, whatever it is, right? And so that is the way that we do things now. Okay, so we're not paying ourselves first. So on the contrary, the way that you pay yourself first is by, when you get paid, right, that same $5,000, right, instead of you paying the mortgage, the utilities, the car note, and the gasoline, you are going to put that money into your life insurance policy. Okay, so you're going to park it right there into your life insurance policy so that it's able to make that return, right? So it's going to go into your cash value. and it's going to make the, the 8% or whatever the market is going to do, right? So it's going to match the market, the 8, 9, 10%, whatever it is, right? So now that money is just sitting in your cash value and it's going to make money. That is you actually paying yourself first. But you have to pay your bills, right? You have mortgage, tuition, and all these things that need to be paid. So what you're going to do is you're going to contact your insurance company and you're going to request a disbursement, right? So you're going to request a loan. So your insurance company, they see your policy as an asset, right? Like I said, it's a liquid asset. And what they're going to do is they're going to see that you have the funds in cash value. And so they're able to issue you a loan for the $5,000, right? And so so now that money is actually going to come from the insurance company's money, from their reserves. It's not going to come from your policy. So your 5,000 is still in your policy, in your cash value, working for you. But you're going to take out a loan, right, or you're going to borrow against it, and you're going to take out a loan from the insurance company for the money that you need in order to pay your bills. So they're going to issue you a loan. They're going to do a direct deposit, okay, but they're going to charge you, right? So they're going to charge you, and usually it's small, 2-3%, right? So if you're making if the market is doing 10 and you're making 10 inside of your policy, and then because you got issued a loan at 3%, then you're just going to average out to 7% return for that 5,000, right? But like I said, your insurance policy is an asset, okay? So they direct deposit that money back into your bank account. So now you have the 5,000 that you're able to use and pay, for your groceries and your utilities and all that stuff, okay? So that is extremely powerful. So what you want to do here is you want to overfund your policy, right? So anything that's coming in, any cash that's coming in from W-2 or from your business, you want to first park it into your insurance policy, borrow it back out, and use it for whatever you need it for, okay? So now let's go back to the second pillar, which is the credit, right? We have the corporate credit. We just got a line of credit for $50,000. So what are we going to do? So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to park that $50,000 into our insurance policy, okay? We're going to park it in there, put it into the cash value, and now that $50,000 is going to be growing at 8, 9, 10%, whatever the market is doing, right? Which is powerful. So now we just established our first stream of income for our trust, right? Because now our trust is able to start generating income, okay? We're going to get that return. So the next thing is that we get to borrow that $50,000 out. So we're leveraging our asset, right? We borrow it out, and now what are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to invest in real estate, right? You also want to have tangible assets within your structure as well. So we're going to we're going to invest in a rental property, right? A rental property, we're going to invest in real estate. We're going to use that $50,000 as a down payment on a property, okay? So there's, a specific strategy that I particularly use when it comes to real estate, right? I do short-term rentals. And so instead of doing like a long-term rental, right? So for example, you are a landlord, you bought a 4-bedroom house, right? And so typically you're going to put one family in there, right? One family, let's just say that you purchase this property. So you use the $50,000 to purchase this property. So you put down You use it as a down payment. You bought a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, right? So now let's just say that your mortgage payments are like $3,000, right? So with this particular property, typically as a landlord, what you would do is you would put one family in there, and you would probably rent it out for $3,500, and you'll probably make $500 a month, right? Let's just hypothetically say that that's the situation, right? And so what you would do is you would collect rent payments for, for once a month, monthly. And by the end of the year, you'll end up with 12 payments, right? But if you do the math, right, which is one of the strategies that I teach, is that there are 52 weeks in a year. So if you do 52 divided by 4, you get 13. So in actuality, there are 13 months in a year versus 12. So if you are renting on a monthly basis, then you are at a disadvantage because you're missing out on that extra month, right? And so the way that you recover that month is by renting weekly versus monthly. Okay, so now that you rent weekly, you're getting 52 payments for the year versus 12. So that means that you're actually recovering more money. You're making more money as a landlord. Okay, so just imagine getting weekly payments every single Sunday versus one payment on the first of the month. Okay, so like I said, this is a mindset shift. It's a lifestyle shift. So now tell me what happens with that money that you're now recovering every single week, right? That you're earning every single week. Where are you going to put it? You're going to put it into your life insurance policy. Okay, so you're going to put it into the policy, you're going to park it in there, and then you're going to borrow it back out and pay your mortgage and whatever other utilities or financial responsibilities that you have for that asset. So now at this point in time, your trust has 2 streams of income. Your trust has the insurance policy as well as the real estate. Okay. So now, one thing that I want to tell you guys is that with your policy, your trust, your private family trust, your asset holding trust is going to be the owner and the beneficiary of your insurance policy. Okay. So if you do not have a policy already, then your trust is going to apply for the policy for you. And the trust is going to be the owner and the beneficiary of the policy. Okay. So that, and you are going to be the insured. Okay. And whoever else is associated with the trust, right? You need to insure everybody. Everyone is a human asset in the trust. Okay. You have tangible assets. And then you have human assets. So in the event that you are the trustee and you expire, the trust needs to be compensated for you dying. Okay. So that means that the death benefit, right? The death benefit is going to go to the trust. Is going to replenish the trust bank account. So that is extremely powerful. Okay. Another thing that's beneficial with your trust owning your insurance policy is that your death benefit is not going to be subject to death tax, inheritance tax, or estate tax. Okay, so that is extremely powerful. So when your trust owns the insurance policy, then none of that applies. But there is a 3-year rule, right? So let's just say that you own, that you already have a policy and you transfer that policy, you transfer the ownership and the beneficiary to the trust, right? But you die within 3 years, then the IRS is going to tax your death benefit. But if you don't die within the 3 years, then they won't, right? So that's one thing to consider. So if you don't have a policy yet, what you want to do is you want to create the owner before you get the asset. You want to create the owner before you get the asset. That is very profound, okay? So that means that you want to establish your trust and have your trust create the asset or take out the asset for you, not you do it as an individual, okay? So let's move on. So how do you transfer wealth, right? So you want to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. You want to own nothing but control everything. That is extremely powerful. Okay. So that is what we call stewardship. Okay. Stewardship is where you are not consumed with ownership. Right. A lot of us, we are very proud, and we're proud that we own our house and that we own our car and, all these things. But that is not the goal, right? The goal is to control the house, to control the car and the bank account and the assets, okay? The policies. That's what the goal is. So you want to be a good steward of your wealth. Okay, so you want to direct it, you want to control it, you want to grow it, you want to be intentional about it. Okay, so that's what stewardship is. And so like I said, when you have these, this primary residence and it's owned by the trust, when you die, there's no transfer that needs to happen. There's no transfer of ownership because the assets are already owned by the trust and your heirs are already the beneficiaries. So they're going to benefit from the assets owned by the trust. They're going to receive distributions, they're going to receive gifts, and and that's how they're able to benefit from the trust and the assets. Okay, and so you have beneficiaries and the trust is going to issue them UBIs, which are units of beneficial interest, or the other term that we use for UBIs is TCUs. TCUs are trust certificate units. So that represents your beneficial interest in the trust. Okay, that's how the real transfer of wealth happens. Okay, so with the TCUs, they sound just like stock certificates, right? So they're very much just like stock certificates. You have stock certificates for, Apple and Google. And so that represents your ownership or you being a shareholder in those companies, right? And so your TCUs that you have means that you are a trust certificate unit holder for the trust. So that represents your beneficial interest. It's the same thing as ownership, but we don't use the term ownership when we're dealing with trust because a trust is a living entity, just like you. And if you don't have an owner, a trust also doesn't have an owner. Okay, so we use beneficial interest. So the trust is going to create 100 trust certificate units. That is going to represent 100% beneficial interest in the trust. And let's just say that you have 4 beneficiaries. So you're going to issue them, if you wanted it to be equal, you're going to issue them each 25 trust certificate units. Okay. So that's what that's what's going to represent their beneficial interest. So let's just say that now we're doing distributions, right? So, $100,000 came in from all the rental properties. It's time for distribution. So what's going to happen is your distribution is based on the amount of TCUs that you have. Okay, so if I have 25 units of units of beneficial interest or TCUs, that means that I'm going to receive a distribution of $25,000 of that 100,000. Okay, so that's one example. Another example is, like I told you guys, the trust has a termination date. It's going to expire. It's going to die, right? Unless you renew it, and you can renew your trust for another 100 years. And that's how you're able to really build that generational wealth, right? To where the trust is going to last 9, 10, 10, 15 generations, because you keep renewing it and renewing it every 100 years. Not you, but whoever the acting trustee is at that time. So with that being said, let's just say you decided not to renew it and the trust is terminated and the trust has 100 houses, right? If I have 25 TCUs and I go, and I go and turn them in, then the trustee is going to deed over 25 properties to me. Okay, so that is what happens when the trust is terminated. all of the assets go to the beneficiaries, and it's the fiduciary's responsibility to do that. So at that time, whatever your beneficial interest is represents what you're going to receive. Okay, so now let's move on to preservation. Oh, I love preservation. So we are on a mission to preserve our wealth. We're on a mission to create generational wealth that actually lasts generations, right? You hear this all the time, where you have famous families that the money and the fame and the fortune is gone by the second and third generation. That's not what we're doing here. So we're in the business of preservation. So the way that you're going to preserve your wealth is through your insurance policies. Okay, so your trust is going to take out a policy on every single individual associated with the trust. Okay, all of the trustees, all of the beneficiaries. Okay, if there is a beneficiary that is born, by day 15, the trust is taking out a policy on them. Okay, so that's one thing. So the trust is going to insure all of the beneficiaries, all the future beneficiaries. So like I said, you are a human asset. The beneficiaries are a human asset. So if a beneficiary passes away, then because the trust lost that human resource or that human asset, the trust gets the death benefit. So they get that preservation, right? They get that, the replenishing of the wealth, right? So let me give you an example that I love to give. So we have a beneficiary. One thing about a trust that I didn't tell you is that, or at least this type of trust, right, is that you as the trustee and the beneficiary, you can take out loans from the trust and you can issue loans to the trust. Okay, so we had spoke about that. I touched on it briefly when I was telling you about the promissory notes. So let me tie it all in together for you now. So when it comes to your beneficiaries, right? So let's just say you have a beneficiary. This beneficiary just turned 18 years old. They want to buy their first car. Typically, what they'll do is they'll go down to the Ford dealership and they'll go ahead and purchase a vehicle, right? So they'll get a loan for the $30,000 and they will have to, at that point, they'll have to take out the loan and, pay back whatever the interest is, right? 10% interest. They have a $500 car note, right? And so that is the typical process that they would go through. But something else that they can do instead is they can take out a loan from the trust, right? So you have the beneficiary, they're going to go to the trust or the trustee, and they're going to request a loan for $30,000 so that they can go buy their first car cash, right? And so at this point in time, the trustee is going to issue out a loan for the $30,000, right? And they're going to do a promissory note from the beneficiary to the trust for the $30,000 plus something small like 2% interest for 48 months, right? And so instead of them paying Ford dealership $500, they're going to pay the trust $300 a month. Okay, so that is the trust actually building wealth by getting 2% from the beneficiary. Okay, so now what's going to happen is the trustee is now going to go to their policy, right? They have a policy. And the trustee is going to borrow the $30,000 from the beneficiary's policy and issue them a check, right? So they borrowed the money from the policy. The $30,000 loan from the policy was deposited into the trust bank account. The trustee issued the check for the $30,000. So now the beneficiary bought the car and started paying and was successfully paying for it, let's just say a whole year. Then they decide to default, right? So the trust was getting that 2% for the first 12 months. Then the beneficiary defaulted and didn't pay, stopped paying. So at that point in time, it is risk-free because the money came from their loan, right? Now, the loan came from their insurance policy, and that loan doesn't have to be paid back, right? So that's one benefit. The next benefit is that when the beneficiary passes away, the death benefit is going to go to the trust. So the trust is going to be paid back that promissory note, right? So that note is going to be, is going to be forgiven, or is going to be paid at that time with the death benefit. Okay, so that is extremely powerful, because that is how you're going to preserve the wealth that's in your trust estate, okay, by those insurance policies, okay? So the books that I recommend are What Would the Rockefellers Do? That's a really good book. That's a very, famous wealthy family, and they utilize insurance policies as well as trust in order to build wealth. So the Rockefeller family right now, they probably have upwards of 250 trusts within their structure, and they're going on their 10th generation. Okay, so that is extremely powerful. You can learn a lot from that family. So I recommend that you read that book. And the other one is The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2. That is an extremely powerful book as well. That's going to teach you how to be a trustee, how to defend and operate your trust. The next one is Family Wealth. That teaches you how to run a family business, how to build wealth, also utilizing trust and insurance, and how to pretty much create a family office to where you have a family crest and things of that nature. And the last one is The Complete Book of Trust. So with that book, it just teaches you the different types of trust so that you can do your due diligence, and the best trust that you need for your particular case and structure, okay? So you want to take action on the information that I provided you guys tonight, right? So your trust is a new form of how you're going to be doing business and making profit. It can solve a lot of the problems that you have right now, especially when it comes to protection and tax savings. But you want to operate this trust the right way. So you want to operate it like a big business, like it's a Google, a Amazon, a Berkshire, right? You want to operate it like that. You're not small time, okay? So definitely, like I said, take action on the information. You don't want to go through probate. You don't want to wait until a lawsuit in order for you to get your affairs in order. You need to get them in order right away, okay? So if you guys are interested, we can work together, okay? So I do have a program. It is called the Wealthy Trustee. So you can go to wealthytrustee.com. And within that program, I have a do-it-yourself, which is 42 video modules, and it's an online course. So you pretty much learn what is a trust, right? And I'll show you guys in a minute what the actual online portal looks like. So you learn, what is a trust, and you get to set up the 3 trusts that I told you in the blueprint, right? The business trust, the private family trust, and the ministry trust. So you get to set up all 3 of those trusts. And so we give you the templates with the video trainings on how to set it up yourself. You get to apply for an EIN. You get the training to apply for an EIN, how to do your board meeting minutes, as well as tax strategies for the for-profit entities that you're creating. Then you learn how to take inventory of your assets and transfer your assets, and how to build wealth, right? So you learn about the different passive income streams that I shared with you guys. So the program is $997. Okay. And the other option is Done With You. So the Done With You is where you still get access to the program, the online modules, and the Facebook community, the resources, and the ebooks. So the ebooks that I just mentioned on the previous page, those are also included in the course. Okay. So you get lifetime access to the course, plus you get 5 Zoom calls where we do it, in a tight knit community group style. And so we are going to be setting up all three of your trusts together, the business trust, the private family trust, and the ministry trust. So you get that confidence to know that it's actually set up the right way, right? You get your questions answered on demand, and you get actually my assistance, right? Because we're doing things, together. And then we will, we'll apply for your EINs for all three of your entities. Then we will do your board meeting minutes together, okay? So you got to do your board meeting minutes. A lot of people are operating entities without doing board meetings, and I don't understand why. I'm going to show you how to operate your trust the right way and how to be a trustee, right? So that's one thing that actually sets apart my program from other programs. And so after we do your board meetings, you learn how to actually set up your bank accounts. Then you will learn we'll do this together where we'll establish your credit, right? Your business credit, we'll get it established with you having a DUNS number and getting those initial trade lines. And then the last thing is transferring your assets, right? So if we need to be filling out your quitclaim deeds or your bill of sales for your vehicles, whatever it is that you need in order to transfer your assets, your insurance policies, all that stuff, we do that stuff together as well. So that is $14.97. Okay. So you decide, which one you want. If you want to do it yourself, that's typically for independent people who don't really need assistance. They are able to, follow video trainings. Or if you want to make sure that it's done correctly, then choose the done with you option. Okay. And those Zoom calls are going to be done Monday through Friday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So we'll do those together. And here's my contact information. So there's my number. You can text me or call me. That's my community number. You can visit the website, wealthytrustee.com. You can email me if you have any questions about anything that I went over tonight in this webinar. And you can follow me on social media. I am Christina Ivette, and the business page is 7 Ways to Wealth. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the online portal, as well as I'm going to show you what a trust looks like, because a lot of you guys, you've only heard the word trust, but you've never seen a trust. And I want to give you the opportunity to actually see what a trust looks like. So bear with me. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So this is the online portal, okay, thewealthytrustee.com. Like I told you, there's 42 lessons here. And so you start with the welcome page, then you go through the trust entities, okay? So you learn what is a trust, who are the different parties involved, the grantor, trustee, beneficiary, successors, protectors, the benefits, and the types of trust. Then you learn about the actual trust, right? So in the program, you get 3 trusts. All 3 of these trusts are different. None of them are the same, right? You have one specifically for business, and so it has business verbiage. And so that trust is 48 pages. Then you have one that is for your private family. And so that is just for holding assets. So that one is 25 pages. And then you have one that is a nonprofit tax exempt entity. And that is just for your philanthropic and your charitable endeavors. And so that one is 22 pages. So here you actually learn about the declaration and the articles of organization. So I go through every single paragraph in the trust, because you cannot be a trustee and you cannot operate a trust without knowing the contents of your trust. It's very important that you learn the actual trust indenture. So we go through the bylaws, the Schedule A, the minutes, and all that stuff. Then you learn how to actually set it up yourself, how to apply for your EIN. So you're going to do that for the private family trust and the unincorporated business trust. And then we learn tax strategies. So you actually being tax exempt, the difference between the tax structures for all 3, how to apply for sales tax exemption, what we consider distributable net income, and how to avoid being an abusive tax evasion, right? So abusive trust tax evasion, that is a thing. So you don't want to use your trust for tax evasion. You want to operate it legally and lawfully. So if you have to do paperwork, you do paperwork, okay? Then the next section, we do the asset protection. So you're going to take an inventory of your asset, because you need to know what you have before you can transfer it into the trust. Then you're going to learn how to create a bank account, broker's account, how to transfer your deed with the quitclaim deeds, the car titles, insurance, your LLC ownership, and how to do your board meetings. And then the last one is wealth creation. That's where you're going to learn how to build the business credit so that you can use it to invest in the stock market, real estate, and the infinite banking. And then we have the resources, right? So the resources is all the documents that you're going to need in order to operate your trust efficiently and effectively. And then those ebooks that I recommended, okay, you have them here. So some of those ebooks are valued at over $700 and they got like 700 pages. And so you get them free with the program. So let me show you what an actual trust looks like, and then I will open the floor for questions. So this is a template for the business trust. Like I told you, is 40 something pages. And so with that, everything that you see in red is what you're going to be filling out, right? So this is the table of contents. These are all the provisions and sections within the trust. So this trust has 39 sections, okay? So we're going to go through all of this. Like I told you, I educate you on every single paragraph within this indenture and declaration so that you can learn, right? You have to learn what's in the trust in order for you to operate it. What are the trustee powers, okay? So it's a contract, like I told you guys earlier in the call. It's a three-party contract. It's created by the grantor, and it's operated by the trustee. So what makes it legal is you actually getting it notarized. So here's that page where you're going to get it notarized, right? You're going to put the grantor is going to sign, the trustee is going to sign, you're going to get notarized in your respective state and county. It's going to be signed, and then it's legalized and you can start using it. Here is the Schedule A where you're going to give that exchange, like I told you. You're going to exchange something in order for the trust to create the certificate units. And then here you're going to distribute the certificate units to the beneficiaries. Then we have a Schedule B where you're going to list all the properties that are going to be held in the trust. The Schedule C is where you're going to put all the beneficiary contact information. The Schedule D is a memorandum of personal property, meaning I want, beneficiary A to get all the houses in Mississippi. I want beneficiary B to get all the houses in New York, things like that. And then you have your certificate of trust. Your certificate of trust is pretty much a summary of your trust, and it just lets, bankers and title companies and all these other, institutions that you're going to be doing business with, it lets them know that you actually have a trust entity, right? Because they're going based off your word, because your trust is private. You're not going to show anyone your trust. It's completely private. And two, you're not going to disclose the parties involved. So you're not going to be walking around here telling people you're the trustee of this trust or who the beneficiaries are. So when it's time for you to go to the bank and they ask you for your trust, you're just going to provide the certificate of trust, okay? And this is just a summary. It tells them, here, this is the name of the trust. Here's the grantors, the trustees. It's an irrevocable trust. Here's the EIN number. Here's the declarations, the trustee powers. We waive any claims that whatever we're using this trust certificate for, we're waiving the claims. The validity of the copy. So you can take a photocopy, you can send it to your legal department, and the actions by the trustee. So you're going to get this notarized, and that's what you're going to use when you go open up your bank account, when you go into a closing table to buy property, things of that nature. Okay. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys for tonight. I'm opening the floor for any questions that you might have. So you can come off mute and ask your questions. Do I have any questions?
I just want to. Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, the question. I'm sorry. Let young lady go first. Ladies first.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
no, you could go. I was just going to say this was fantastic. You did a great job, Christina, explaining this. So really, really appreciate it, and mind blowing. So the young man, he can go ahead and ask his question.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm appreciative of those kind words. And thank you for attending. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for contributing.
Okay. The question I had was the trusts that we open up, are these going to be domestic or foreign trusts?
So they're only for the United States. They're not foreign trusts.
Okay. And also you spoke on tax evasion. As I read in the IRS manual, tax avoidance and tax evasion is two different things. So what we're doing is tax avoidance.
You
Because
said
tax
what
avoidance
you
tax
saying what we're doing is tax avoidance?
yeah, as far as with the trust and moving assets around and things like that, it's tax avoidance, which is not illegal. It's actually that's what all the big players are doing.
Okay, I
The
understand that.
tax evasion.
I didn't say that we're doing tax evasion. I'm training you on how to avoid tax evasion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what we are doing is tax avoidance, not tax evasion.
Okay.
They are paying with. Yes. I mean, why is this guy?
Next.
Okay, so I do have a couple of questions. So bear with me. I wrote a couple of them down. Starting with the grantor. Is that supposed to be someone not related to you or someone related to you? How do you determine who is going to start this trust and what do you need from that person in order for you to decide, hey, you're going to be the grantor because I'm going to be the trustee because I need to have control of everything.
So the grantor, it can be anyone. So it could be someone that's blood related to you, like a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, a next of kin, or it could be someone who's not related to you. So it could be a neighbor, a best friend, whoever it is that you want to appoint as the grantor. And the only thing is that obviously they need to be an adult, right? So 18 and older, and they also need to agree to be the grantor, as well as understand that they're not going to have any power or influence over the trust, and they need to be able to notarize the trust. So that is the only responsibility that they would have. Once they notarize the trust, they walk away from the trust. So they're not going to have any influence over the trust, and they're not going to have any like exposure or access to the trust, right? You're gonna be operating as the trustee, and so your trust is private.
Okay, thank you for that one. So the other question I wrote down is, with the program, I understand the one where you're doing it yourself, but do you give specifics on like what company that you would probably need to go to start the life insurance policy?
Yes, I do.
Or and also about how to get started in real estate, because you may have some people who never purchased real estate besides their own home. Other than that, they may not have done that. So do you give steps on how to go about maybe wanting to get rental property or something like that?
Yeah, so I'm adding modules. So like this program, I'm always adding to it. So right now it exists with 42 videos, like I showed you. And so I'm always adding more things into the program. So the one about the real estate investing that is coming, and I'm going to teach you my exact strategy. So I only touched on it briefly. I didn't even scratch the surface of of being strategic when it comes to real estate investing. But those intentions are there because I'm a real estate investor. Okay. I flip houses. I'm actually in development right now, being mentored by an individual who is doing like 200 unit development. So everything that I'm learning, I'm putting into the program. I'm not holding back. So all of the things that I use in my real estate investing, those are coming. So they should be available probably in like a week or two, just depending on my team and how fast they can get it published into the program. But there was another question besides real estate. I think it was, what was it?
I'm sorry, I was trying to find the mute button.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
About the life insurance
Oh,
that
the
you
life
do
insurance.
recommend.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. So with the life insurance, yes, I'm partnered with a life insurance company, and I give you all of their contact information. And they're the ones that I highly recommend. They're the individuals that I and my current clients have gotten IUL policies with. So I'm not going to recommend, anyone that I haven't, done business dealings with. Okay. So currently today I have 5 IUL policies, and I'm actively doing infinite banking with my 5 policies. My policies are owned by the trust, and the beneficiaries are the trust. So I'm not educating you guys on things that I am not doing. So I provide you with their contact information because that's who I trust.
Okay, and this is the last question. I'm sorry. I don't mean to pick up anybody else's time.
Oh, don't worry about it. I don't even know if other people have questions, Lakeisha. Girl, get your questions
You know me, I'm gonna ask.
Please do. That's how I am too. I don't want to leave a webinar without having my questions answered.
Okay, thank you for this.
You're
So,
welcome.
the trust certificate that you just showed us, on that, I know you said you use that so when you get ready to open up your accounts and whatever, closing on a property or something like that, besides showing that, because, traditionally, let's say, you want to, purchase a property or purchase a vehicle, and I know you're doing it through maybe, your business trust or something like that, but they want to show proof of income. So how is that? I mean, are you still showing how the trust is making money? Do you still have to show where the income comes from, showing that you're able to afford to purchase any of those type of assets?
Yeah, you do. So if you are going to qualify for a mortgage, it's the same as, as an individual, right? You have to provide proof of income. So with the trust, you're going to provide your bank statements in order for you to qualify for that mortgage. So yeah, you can. So what's private is your actual trust, your indenture, those 42 pages that I showed you. That's what's private. You don't want to show anybody the contents of your trust. So that's why when they want to know that an actual trust exists, because you're not going to just walk up to the dealership and say, hey, I have ABC Trust, I want to buy a car. They're going to be like, they're looking through the Secretary of State. It's not registered anywhere. It's a private entity. Like, how do I know that this actually exists? So that's why you're going to provide your EIN, board meeting minutes showing that you actually have held a meeting with the intentions on purchasing, a vehicle from this dealership. And then your certificate of trust, which shows that there is a entity that actually is certified and exists and has been in existence prior to this certificate of trust being being legalized.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
You're welcome, Lakeisha. Is it Trayvon? Hi.
Yes, it is. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. I want to say thank you for this information. It was very, very appreciative. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here and pouring in.
Thank you. Thank you. My first question is, how much does a trust cost, or if it does cost anyone?
You said, how much does the trust cost?
Yeah, do you have to pay to start one or anything like that, or you can just walk in and do that?
Yeah, so you do have to create the trust, right? So that's why I have a program showing you how to create the trust. So if you get into the program, then it's just the cost of the program, right? So if you want to get into the program, the most affordable one is the $997, and you get to set up 3 trusts, right? So it's not going to cost you, once you enter the program, you're going to have a Word document where you're going to be downloading the template and actually creating your trust. Once your trust is created, you're going to print it out and you're going to get it notarized. So if you get it notarized, like let's just say at your bank, it's probably, you know, without a fee. But if you go to, you know, a notary place, they're going to charge you. So typically notaries are not that expensive, right? It's 10, 15, 20 bucks. So it's just going to cost you, after you're in the program, it's only going to cost you how much it, you know, costs for you to get it notarized. And then once you open up your bank account, you want to fund your trust bank account with, you know, something initially. So just also keep that in mind as well. So when I opened up my trust bank account, the bank that I went to, their minimum was $100 in order to, you know, put into an account in order to have that account established. So I put $100.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful. I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Should a beginner just jump right into this? Like, say somebody that never heard about this, not myself, but like say somebody that, like, if I'm just bringing this to like a cousin or a family member, should they just jump right into it, or should they like go and read or study up on, you know, a couple of things before they just jump right into creating a trust?
So, I mean, you should definitely do your due diligence. I'm always going to tell you, do your research, do your due diligence, and look and see, you know, if a trust is what you really want, right? I highly recommend it. I mean, but find out if a trust is what you really want, and then from there, you know, just get the training that you need in order to set up the trust and in order to actually know how to operate the trust and be a trustee. So one thing that I've seen in this industry, and I've seen with a lot of my clients, is that a lot of my clients, some of them, they come with trust already. So they either set up a trust with another company or with a bank or with a lawyer, and there was no training involved. So those lawyers and companies and banks and stuff didn't show them how to operate a trust, how to do board meetings, how to apply for an EIN, how to transfer their assets. They just handed them a stack of papers and pretty much said, you know, thank you for seeing me, you know, get out my office kind of thing. And so they are frustrated. They don't know what to do. They're afraid. They don't know how to operate as a trustee. And so they choose not to use the trust that they just purchased from whatever company they decided to. So that's what I've seen. So it's very important for you to get the training that you need in order to effectively operate the trust the way you want to operate the trust, so that you could really maximize on the benefits.
All right, cool. Thank you, Goddess.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you tonight, asking those good questions and pouring into the community. Do I have any other questions? I know it's late, guys. It's 10:20.
Yes, I have actually two more questions. I see this being recorded. Are we going to receive a copy of this recording so we can
Oh,
like, go back over
absolutely.
it?
I'm actually going to put it on YouTube as soon as we are done, Mr. Authorized
Okay.
Representative of MIC.
And
So let me drop the actual YouTube link, so you know where to find it, okay? But if you text the
okay.
number, you know the number that you receive a text message to come into this webinar. If you text
Yes.
that number, then I will send you the link to the recording, but I'm gonna upload it as soon as we are done, okay?
Okay, and my other question is, you said the person that becomes the grantor, they said they have to like pretty much walk away from it and not be in control of anything. Could they also be a beneficiary of the trust too, or they cannot
No.
receive?
No, not of a, all right, I just put the YouTube channel link in the chat. So if anybody wants to find all of the past recordings, you can go to that channel, okay? So with this type of trust, right, with a irrevocable trust, it's a non-grantoring trust. So the grantor doesn't have any power, any control, or any influence. And so they cannot be the trustee or the beneficiary. So it's just specific to a different type of trust, right? With the living trust, that's not the case. So it's the type of trust that we're talking about.
Okay, and so which trust is that you're referring to that they have to just be the grantor and just walk away and not have any control?
Yeah, so it's an irrevocable trust. So it's an irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust, the grantor has irrevocability, no power, no control, and they cannot terminate the trust. They can't do anything with the trust. That's
Okay.
that's an irrevocable trust.
Okay. And with the you said with the family trust, the living trust, that can be different.
I said a living trust is different. A living trust is different. So a living trust is like your alter ego. You are everything. So you're the grantor, you're the trustee and the beneficiary. So
Okay.
it's just, you know, a second version of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had another question. Let's go back to the promissory notes that you spoke about. With the promissory.
The volume is a little bit,
Oh,
it's not very clear. Or I don't know.
okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. I said, can we go back to the promissory notes that you spoke about? I know in the beginning you said, you know, if a person wanted to transfer the money over, that the trust can do a promissory note and say that they can pay it back in 12 months. But what happens if the trust is unable to do that? What happens at that point? I mean, is there any?
You can extend the promissory note. You can do an
Okay.
extension.
Okay, so you can keep extending it if necessary or if needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I see Jerry has his hand up. Hey, Jerry.
Yes, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. One of my questions was answered by about the recording.
Oh,
The
yes.
other thing is the 1497. Now, say if I got that training, do I have to start it during a certain time period, or can I just like get it and hold it, and then when I'm ready, take action on it?
Yeah, you can start it when you're ready. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there was an echo, Jerry, but with the done with you, you can start it when you're ready. So I have consistent trainings every single week, Monday through Friday. And so you just join whichever training. So I have a training on the business trust and we do the business trust together. So you just join that meeting. Or if you already set up your business trust and all you need is, you know, to apply for your EINs, then you jump into that meeting where I'm going over in a group setting how you apply for your EINs, and then you apply for the EINs for all three of your entities. Or if you just need the training on asset transfer, then you jump into the Zoom calls and we do it together. So we'll go through your quit claim deeds, your bill of sales, whatever it is that you need, right? Your insurance paperwork, whatever it is, and we start transferring your assets together. So it's pretty much, you know, on demand, and you can start whenever and you can go at your own pace because the trainings are done weekly. And so if you don't want to jump on the trainings this week, you know, you're on vacation, then next week you catch whatever training, whatever live training that you missed. I hope that answered your question, Jerry. I know you're on mute. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So you would have access to that training multiple times?
Yeah, so with Done With You, it's live trainings every single week, Monday through Friday. So you just jump into the live trainings on demand whenever you need to or whenever you want to. And then you also have access to the course as well. So you have both. So you have me live that's actually physically helping you on Zoom. We're physically working together like right now on Zoom live. So anything, and then and that's done in a group setting. And then if you have anything that's private or that is, that cannot be done in a group setting, then you can book a one-on-one. And so you just jump on the calendar and we'll do it, independently one-on-one. So those are with the Done With You. All right. Next question. Raymond? No?
First, I want to say thank you so much for this information. You have totally taken this audience and everybody that you teach to another level when it comes to mindset, as you said. But this is not explained by the lawyers, the attorneys that are setting these up for people. And so by you actually showing them how to do it themselves, it's saving them thousands of dollars. I do have an investment firm. I do have this kind of relationship with lawyers. Now, working with you, I can see myself being able to save people thousands of dollars and give them understanding. The key is understanding the technical elements. And by you going through all of this, I really appreciate that. Even down to the IULs. Most people don't know about that because they don't teach that. Most insurance companies, they only teach the terms and the holds, but they don't teach you that next, as of the 90s, the new life insurance that has living benefits. So were totally on point with everything. I appreciate your mentors. I appreciate everything you shared, and everybody that attached themselves to this training tonight. You got the real deal, and I'm so glad I met you. I will continue to work with you, and everybody in here, I think, should. You know what I mean? But they don't know me, but I appreciate you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Raymond. I appreciate you too. Thank you for attending the webinar tonight. Thank you for the compliments and pouring into the community and adding that extra value, because it's true, right? A lot of people, they don't know about the benefits of, of their trust or of operating or of attaching it to the insurance policy. So these are all strategies that that wealthy individuals are using. And like, I'm mentored by these individuals and I'm building wealth. You guys, I have 7 streams of income. So I was able to retire from nursing at 31 years old, and I am empowering people. You can retire at a young age. You can be financially free. You can have financial freedom, location freedom, time freedom. And this was ordained by God. Okay, God told me to start sharing this with people, and that's why I'm here today. So thank you, Raymond. I appreciate you, and I look forward to connecting with you. Do I have any other questions? I know it's late. It's 10:30. If you guys have any questions, you can text the community line that you receive the reminder, or you can send me an email, whatever works for you. Contact me on Instagram. So thank you so much, everyone. If I don't have any other last questions, then I'm going to close the webinar for tonight. And I appreciate everyone attending. You guys have a blessed evening, and I am going to put the replay up now. So if you want to share it with any of your loved ones or friends so that they can get exposed to this type of information, that would also be phenomenal. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you and be blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.